So Dave, you help players, or sorry, people perform under stress and work with like top MMA athletes. But chat to me about how you got to here. So as I was chatting to you, I've heard you on the Two Beers podcast. I've heard your story and it's class. But yeah, just I suppose give me a brief overview or people listening of your journey to the work you're doing now.
Yeah, I work with MMA athletes, but I work with athletes across all sports and also anyone who's trying to optimize health and performance. My background is in professional as a professional ocean lifeguard. That was my early career, both in New Zealand and abroad. And that's what introduced me, I guess, or started introducing me to, very sort of high stress, high pressure environments in real practical settings. From there, I went overseas on this lifeguard exchange, and I spent about 8 years overseas traveling. And then when I came back to New Zealand, I really had nothing behind me apart from the lifeguarding, and all my mates were getting married and having kids and had houses and mortgages, and I felt a bit lost. But I was going for a surf one day, bumped into my mate, and he talked to me about this, that he was doing this paramedic degree. And I didn't even really know what that entailed or even what being a paramedic entailed, but he told me that it was shift work and you did 4 days on and 4 days off. So straight away I was like, that sounds amazing. I'll be able to surf on my days off. And I enrolled in the degree. A 3-year degree in health science, and then a 1-year postgraduate diploma. And then I went out on the road and worked as a paramedic, and over 11 years worked my way up to an intensive care paramedic, which nowadays is like taking the resus room from a hospital out into the environment. A very broad range of scope of practice. I guess in that job, it is very much, you are constantly dealing with high pressure, high stress environments and jobs. And that sort of taught me, going through that process, that 11-year process of working on the ambulance, how to deal with stress and pressure. Because it's not something that was ever taught to me at school or at university. And early on in my career as an intensive care paramedic or as a paramedic, I would go to these jobs and I'd get cognitively overloaded, and I could feel the stress and pressure, and I didn't know how to leverage it properly, and it would definitely put me off. And in that job, you have to make clinical decisions on drug doses and extrication. There's so much going on in these sometimes really chaotic scenes that it got to the point where I had to figure this stuff out, and that is really where it started for me, and having a deeper understanding of how stress and pressure manifests physically and mentally. And then after 11 years of working on the ambulance service, I was kind of a bit burnt out. You're doing a lot of night shift and you're being exposed to a lot of different stuff, which is quite mentally taxing. And so I started my own business. It started off just in the shed out the back of my house. I called it Woody's Movement Workshop, and I worked with people around muscle imbalance. I did that for like a year or two. And then I started noticing, like, a lot of the people that I was training, I started working with some athletes, were experiencing what I experienced, and that's cognitive and physical overload secondary to uncontrolled stress. And that's where my business is now, integrated training. I work with people that to get them to better understand how to leverage stress and pressure.
Class. And it's something really interesting. Yeah, my brother's a doctor, and I chat to him, and I'm interested in helping people perform under pressure and deal with all that stuff. And chatting to him, he was just saying that, like, he's pretty okay with it, but he sees it in other people in his class, like panicking hard. They learn these stuff in textbooks, and then they go on to a ward. And he was saying he's seen people literally like breaking down because they can't function. And there's zero training in most jobs on how to actually perform under pressure, deal with stress.
It's fascinating, eh? It's absolutely fascinating. If the biggest problem that we're dealing with now in modern life is stress, which it is, we weren't designed to live in concrete jungles. We weren't designed to have all the acute stresses that we experience in a day. If that's the biggest problem we're facing, which I believe it is, this stuff should be entrenched in school and in university, and it should be being taught. We should, the skills of stress. it's so important, man. We talk about, like, you hear athletes and coaches and people talking about how important the mental game is, but how much time, effort, and focus are these teams and these individual athletes putting into their mental health? Because that's what it is. It's your mental health, your physical health, your mental health. And you know, I think there's a big disparity there in most you know, most sports, or whenever anyone's trying to optimize or achieve peak performance. And the problem there is, if it doesn't matter how physically gifted you are, if you're not on point mentally, that has a ripple-on effect into your physical performance, obviously.
Yeah, 100%. It literally doesn't matter how good you are physically. Like, and I've been there, and lots of people have been there, where like you freeze or you just capitulate, and it literally doesn't matter what you've done in the gym, what you've done training wise.
No, you see it all the time, and these athletes, man, they are so gifted, both physically and mentally. But you really have to. I mean, the stress that they're under is unprecedented, right? There's, you know, if we think of team sports, there's the pressure of, you know, sponsorship, and you know, it's the pressure of just making the team every week now. These people are under an extraordinary amount of pressure, and then you add, you know, life's pressures to that, and if you don't have a good toolbox in terms of like mental skill development, and you can, yeah, it can become very overwhelming, and that's where you see like a lot of, I think, athlete burnout. Yeah.
100%. And chat to me about some of the stuff you do with the MMA fighters. So like you work with Israel Adesanya, Kai Kara France, and some yeah, like top athletes there.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I try to do is try and find some balance, because they all train. The training load is so significant that it creates imbalances in all of these body systems, in their breathing system, and their musculoskeletal system, and their cardiovascular system. It ripples over into their sleep. It has an effect on their recovery, predisposes them to injury. So it is trying to find some balance there, with methods that they can, or exercises that they can integrate in daily that shift them into a calm state. Especially with fighting, I mean, like you're constantly in a fight camp, you're just constantly preparing for battle, right? And so it's very easy to get stuck in an upregulated state, what we call a sympathetic dominant state. And that really taxes your energy availability. So it's about, integrating stuff into the training that shifts them back into a calm state. And then also being able to get them to understand this stuff, because, you know, what we're actually talking about is nervous system regulation. Them being able to regulate their nervous system so they don't get stuck in that upregulated state. And for my business and the athletes that I work with, there's three things that we make sure are entrenched in the training that I believe are absolutely critical to success. And that is to get them to understand the underlying mechanisms of stress and pressure, how it manifests physically and mentally, so in their bodies and in their mind. Giving them the skills so that they have, you know, this toolbox full of skills that they can pull on, and then putting them in practical settings so that they can take that knowledge, take those skills and apply them outside of their sport. I don't know much about fighting, like I don't know much about rugby or soccer, but I know that you can take these athletes outside of those environments, teach them this stuff, then they take it and apply it. The best athletes are the ones that can take things and apply it, right? But you can't do that unless you understand what you're doing. Plus, when you understand, it has a massive ripple-on effect, because that's that placebo effect. You understand what you're doing, and then you can start using your language when you're doing it. Hey, this meditation, this nervous system regulation work is like doing A, B, and C, and it's so good for me. And that's that like self-talk that you can only really get if you understand what you're doing. I don't know if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, 100%. I love those three steps. And have you ever had any challenges with helping, or with people wanting to know more I would, but then I would presume that those people wouldn't be coming to you, or say if someone was told to come to you and they're just not so interested, or trying to say sell someone on it, or trying to get them to understand it. I'm just looking at that first step, like helping them understand, like, hey, meditate. Someone who's never meditated, someone who's never breathed consciously, or who's never done anything, and then you're trying to help them understand the benefits when they've no conceptual idea of this. Has that ever happened?
Yeah, yep. But the onus is on both people, right? Like, I'm not there to motivate people or to get people to do stuff. I'm there to show them that, hey, there's this thing that you can do, and this is what it can do for you. If you are interested in doing it, then let's smash it. But most of the people, man, like, I'm pretty good at screening people, and most of the people are I mean, like, athletes are normally really motivated, right? And then people that are, and they're always trying to find the edge. They call it the 1%. And then people with chronic stress and pressure, they're kind of desperate. They're like, they'll try anything. So I think it's all, how are you able to get on the same level as the person that you're working with? And I'm good at doing that. I'm good at understanding, like, human behavior, and so it hasn't been a big problem. But I think, yeah, if someone doesn't want to be there, like, then I'm not interested either. It's like, you know what it's like when you work with an athlete or a professional or anybody. It should never be like this one-sided thing, like, I'm teaching you. It should be a two-way thing. I learn more from these athletes than sometimes I think they learn from me. It's like, I find it fascinating, like, working with them, and I'm learning heaps by working with them. Like, working with someone like, take Israel, for example. Like, I've learned so much over the last few years of working with him. And just watching how he does things, and it's like incredibly motivating. Like, you want to elevate. Like, this is the great thing about working with these people, is you want to elevate to their level, right? And that's what, like, I thrive off. Like, even just trying to build my business, it's so, like, contagious. Like, that, their passion and their, like, determination and their resilience and their the ability to, like, take losses, and then, it's very contagious. So I love it.
Unreal. Yeah, I can.
That's like, sorry, that's like, everyone should surround themselves with people like that, right? If it's so important, man. Even like my close friends, they are all people that, like, pump me up, right? And that's how it should be. You shouldn't be surrounding yourself with people that push you down. And it should be, yeah, we should be pumping everyone up.
100%. And I noticed that about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, when I started doing my thing here. I went to, like, I started being aware of that. And then about a year ago, or about 10 months ago, I went to a seminar, which was like entrepreneurship, marketing, just kind of that kind of stuff. And man, I was so literally pumped up, because I'm around so many people who have big dreams and goals and are wanting to go get it, and just the enthusiasm is just incredible. And I remember leaving that more pumped up than I had ever been in my life, I would say, because I was around so many of these like-minded people.
Yeah, we know this, that one of the best ways to deal with chronic stress, if you're overloaded with stress and pressure, is social connection, right?
Yeah.
That's the best way to deal. I mean, you know what it's like when you meet up with your mates and you go for a beer, or, I don't know, for a coffee, or you catch up. You feel so good. And so it's very important then that the people that you surround yourself with are people that elevate you and don't push you down. Man, there's some companies that I have worked for, I'm 42, and so I've done lots of different jobs, and there's companies I've worked in where the environment is so toxic. And there are lots of those companies out there. There's lots of great companies as well. But I just always look at those companies and I think, like, why would you ever create that type of environment? It's not a type of environment to, like, I mean, most people stop their jobs not because they don't like the work or the business sector they're in. They don't like the boss. They don't like the people. And that's why they leave, like 95% of the time, that's why they leave. I'm now building my business and getting people, you know, I'm a collaborator, so I like collaborating with people, and there's now, as the business is growing, we're starting to bring people in to work in the business. And my whole thing is I just want to create the culture that that breeds creativity.
100%. It's so true. And yeah, you want people to want to work in your business, and you want to give them the space that, like you say, they can be creative, because you can't be creative when you're stressed. It's simple as. And this is the same, like rugby is my main main athletes I work with. But when you're stressed, and like you mentioned about the nervous system, when you're stressed, you can't create, you can't get into that space where you're creative. And this is the same MMA fight. I know you different athletes, but I like to think of MMA fighters too, because they're so creative. They have to be in the moment to be their best selves. And it's the same in a work environment. You know, if you're stressed, and I think that in the past, in work and in sport, people used to think that stressed environment was great because people were on edge all the time, but and that was somewhat beneficial, but it's just so far off.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like, uncontrolled stress is very bad for you, right? And controlled stress is very good for you. But you can only be in an environment where it is controlled stress if that environment is a positive environment, and you want to be there. And there's something to be said for, like, this is going off on a slightly different tangent, but one of the things that, like, I talk to a lot with the people I work with is how to bridge the gap between stress and pressure and overwhelm, apprehension, tension, and excitement, because physiologically, neurologically, biologically, it's the same thing is happening. When you're excited, you're upregulated. You have adrenaline, you have cortisol, you're sort of pumped up. And the same thing with stress and pressure. You're upregulated, adrenaline, cortisol, noradrenaline, you're pumped up. So how do we bridge that gap? And how we bridge that gap is focus. Our ability to focus unlocks creativity, because you can't focus and be creative if your mind is agitated. And so we work a lot around how to bridge that gap, and how you bridge that gap is very much internal, learning to control some of these key body systems that we all have, your breathing, your nervous system, your muscular system, even your using your vision to better control physiologically, better control stress.
A great point. And then that's feeding into what you're saying there, like say ice baths or cold water exposure, so that you're intentionally putting yourself under quite a lot of stress, and you're learning to manage and deal with that and stay calm while in a potentially stressful environment. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, that's like where these practical settings come in, where we want to put people in a stress state, in a physically and mentally stressed state, and then for them to be able to use these things like their breathing. The breathing is a key one, to be able to elicit a calm state. So to be able to work with the agitation and be focused, alert, and calm. And the ice bath is a great way to train that, because there's no more noxious stimulus than 1 degree water, right? Like, it puts you in a very high, what we call sympathetic state. That's the division of your nervous system that is responsible for that fight, they call it that fight, flight, or freeze response. But all it does is just gear you up for battle, gear you up to mobilize energy to do something. And yeah, the ice bath's like funny, because I post pictures of people in the ice bath, and people are sending me messages all the time. Hey, have you not seen the latest research? Like, cold water is detrimental to muscle recovery. Well, if we think about recovery, the most potent form of recovery is your ability to be able to self-regulate your nervous system, to be able to shift from that sympathetic into the parasympathetic. And so, yes, I understand the research, and it's but there's deeper layers to it. And it's not about muscle recovery, it's about being able to regulate your nervous system in these stressful environments.
Yeah, 100%. It's you being in control of your mind. And I found about 5 years ago, I went through a rough patch of mental health and then different things. And I remember the cold showers about 3 years ago, I started doing them. And at that point with those, I just realized like I'm in control, like, of my mental state. Like I have the control. It's not like it may happen again. Like I might get depressed again. I might, and I suppose, but I just was like that. The cold showers just told me like I'm in control, because once you can stand under there for 10
Yeah,
minutes, 5 minutes.
yeah, it's rad. There's so many things to unlock there. One is people that have anxiety. I mean, we all have anxiety, but people that have significant anxiety, that's inhibiting their ability to do normal day-to-day things. People that are chronically stressed, depressed, what they tend to do is they create a lot of safety barriers, right? And on a micro level, getting in the ice bath, and they don't feel like they have control, because it can be very confusing when you're in a chronically anxious or stressed state, right? Um, on a micro level, the ice bath is everything about breaking down those barriers. It's all about getting in there and controlling it. And when you get these people that have a negative relationship with stress and pressure in the ice bath, and they can control their breathing, and they can, shift even into a calm state in the cold, they get out of that, and it is, you can just see it's like a switch goes off. It's like, wow, well, if I can control that, I can apply that to this and this and this, and maybe I can pull down some of these barriers. And man, I love it. I love like seeing that, and the ice bath is just such a good practical way to demonstrate to people, because people need that. They need to, like, you can talk to them all you want, but they need to actually feel it. We need to feel this stuff, um, and then go and apply those things into every other facet of health and performance.
Yeah, 100%. It's like opening a door.
And that's why, like, I mean, like, ice baths, like, is all over social media right now. Like, it seems like everyone's doing it, and it's a buzz, and it should be. It should be a buzz. People should be doing it because it's great. It makes you feel wonderful. You get when you get out of the ice bath, when you're in the ice bath, you get a big flood of noradrenaline. That's adrenaline for your brain, which improves your focus. When you get out, you achieve something. That's some dopamine. And it's the combination of this adrenaline and the dopamine that makes you feel so good when you get out. And so it lifts your mood. It elevates your mood.
100%. And I suppose I think back to, I remember when I was under 18 playing in rep teams, we had to have ice baths, like had to have ice baths after trainings and stuff. And we didn't get the education around it. It was very much fear-based. Oh shit, you see them filling ice baths. Oh no, oh my God, we're gonna have to get into those after. Oh fuck. And so you went and you got into an ice bath, and you were just like, you talk about the nervous system, and like ours would have stayed up regulated or whatever. We'd have been just like, oh shit, when's it over, when's it over, when's it over? And you're just stressing in there, and you're not breathing. And so it doesn't actually have any benefit, probably negative then in that sense. Whereas the whole thing, just to bring it back, what we're saying is that when you can then relax when you're in there, you then hold the power to relax at any time. So it's the best way to build a skill of relaxing.
Yes, absolutely, man. And what like, if you're using this as a tool for mental skill development, and what you're looking for is patterns of behavior. So what is the pattern of behavior here? Okay, 1 minute before getting in, you're stuck in your head, your language is negative. You get in there, you have no ability to control your breathing, you're sitting in there all tense. That's the same pattern, the exact same pattern that is going to come out, because that's hardwired, that pattern is hardwired. And that is this exact same pattern that will come out in other high pressure, high stress moments. And actually, it's very simple. What we're teaching is very simple. It's conscious control of your breathing, simple body scans, it's just having more awareness. But it's these key things like, actually taking conscious control of your breathing, doing the opposite of the stress response. This, when the stress response and how it upregulates the body, you are almost doing the opposite. That rather than your breathing rate increasing, you're going to lower your breathing rate. Rather than holding tension in your muscular system, you're going to relax every single muscle in your body. And then you're going to start tapping into your mind, your language, and your perspective. Hey, I'm good, I've got this. And then you start training your mind to not latch to the end of the 2 minutes or 3 minutes or however long you're in there, and actually be able to bring your mind to the present moment. So that's like that. The definition of mindfulness or meditation is like to be able to be in the moment. Incredibly powerful stuff, man. And that's why, yeah, it's so popular. But I think there's like a lot of misunderstanding out there about the cold water, and that's why I'm getting these floods of messages coming in of people saying, hey, you know, why are you doing this? It's got nothing to do with muscle recovery. I never use it for muscle recovery. Don't even think about it in terms of muscle recovery. I think about it in terms of the things we've talked about, but in a deeper sense of recovery, which is learning how to regulate your nervous system, because we do actually have control even of our autonomic nervous system, called autonomic because we've got no control over it. Of course we do. We have control over it through our thought processes, through our perspective, through our control of our breathing. Indirectly, we absolutely have control. It was interesting, man. I was doing this training in the pool with the UFC boys, and it ended up being, I think it was on the UFC countdown or something like that. But you could hear me say, "Hey, guys, you're going to shift now into that parasympathetic state," because we talk about it a lot: sympathetic, parasympathetic, energized, relaxed. And so you could hear it in the comments that a doctor typed in there. He said, "Hey, what you're saying is actually false. You can't shift yourself into a parasympathetic state because it's not under our voluntary control." And I wrote back and I said, "No, absolutely we can. We can control that." And he said, "Any first year medical student knows that you cannot control the autonomic nervous system." So I wrote back and I said, "Hey, if you have a thought come in, a negative thought, and you're able to deconstruct that thought and respond positively, change your language, shift your perspective, you have intercepted stress, and that is going to have a ripple-on effect into your autonomic tone, your ability to, be in either a sympathetic or a parasympathetic." And just through conscious control of your breathing, I explained it. When you consciously control your breathing, you calm the system. So indirectly, yes, we do. And he came back and he said, "Hey, I've never thought of it like that." Yeah, that was my point.
Yeah. And what kind of stuff do you do? I've seen the videos. I think I've seen the exact one you're talking about. And what kind of stuff do you do with the different athletes in the pool? Like what does a session like that look like?
A session in the pool is a combination of recovery, shifting them into that calm state, because as you know, a lot of these athletes are overloaded, overtrained. So it's prioritizing recovery first and foremost. A small portion of the training is actually putting them into a stressful environment and start to elicit some of the patterns that we talked about. So what are their patterns when the stress comes in underwater? What do they look like? And then the other parts of the training in the pool is for them to try and work things out that are going on in their lives. That's like, I don't know, I'll give you an example. We might do like a 20-minute floating meditation in the pool, where they're just quiet. And so, what we tend to do nowadays is we're very good at being upregulated. We're not so good at downregulating. And when there is quiet time, we try to fill that void. Because when you have an agitated mind, it's agitating to be quiet, to be in a quiet place. So we fill that void with screen time or whatever else it might be, food, alcohol. There's so many things that we work on in the pool, and it's different with every athlete depending on where they're at physically and mentally. Sometimes they come in and, like, I always ask them, what's your energy today? And we have a 1 out of 10 rating. And they might come in and be absolutely buggered, and they're like, my energy is like 2. Well, then I may have something planned in the pool, but you can't add load to someone who is already overloaded. So that might have to change, right? It might just be a recovery session. If with a fighter, for example, if they're out of camp, then yeah, we can apply some more stress and pressure. But you have to understand that, like, it's easy to get an athlete in the pool or in any environment and just smash them. But it's kind of like, if they're looking for these one percenters outside of the system that they're in, I think probably 90% of the time that should be favoured towards recovery.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd agree, but you understand like the what goes into the training load.
Yeah, I know. I agree. And something I thought about when I was living in Vancouver for the last 4 years before COVID, I used to do quite a bit of hot yoga, and it was very strenuous. And you had to, I think it was Joe Rogan said, it's like a martial art, but on your own, because you go into those places and it's challenging. And at the end, you do a shavasana, which is you lie down on your back. This is the end of every yoga practice, from what I gather. You lie on your back, and I think the deeper meaning of it is you die, or you practice dying, and you just completely just feel the weight of your body on the ground, and you just completely just, we'll say meditate, whatever it is, but that just really just centers you, and you're doing this kind of stressful within the yoga. It's stressful to an extent, and then you do that, and you're just so grounded and so relaxed when you get up and leave. And what you're saying there, something that I think would be huge, which I doubt is done, and I just think from a rugby lens, rugby players go into the gym 3 times a week. They're lifting hard, they're firing up the nervous system, and then they finish their session. They might have a little bit of a stretch, but then they go off, and then there's stress. So, you're kind of, your nervous system's fired up, you're stressed in a way, and then you take out your phone, and then you go off and you carry on your day, and you're staying in that upregulated state. Whereas if athletes after a gym session, and strength and conditioning coaches did this, where it's like, all right, boys, all right, we're all going to lie down, and you put on some calming music, and everyone just lies down for 3 or 4 minutes at the end and just do essentially that shavasana, which is done in yoga, and then they leave.
What you're talking about, Brian, is the essence of performance, being able to shift from an energized into a calm state, and being able to practice to do it quickly, right? I put so much emphasis with the athletes I work with in their ability to shift from an energized to a relaxed state, because that's control of your energy output. And there are key times where this should be integrated into all sports, and that is at the end of a high intensity session. Right, the heart rate's up, the blood pressure's up, the breathing's up, the nervous system's upregulated. How quickly can you shift back into a calm state, and what are you going to use? In the court, look, we take fighting, for example, they 1 minute between rounds. What do they have access to downregulate? What do they have access to?
Their breath.
Nothing external, maybe some ice and a few words from the coach, right? It's all internal. Their ability to control their energy in that moment is, these intricate body systems that are designed to regulate stress and pressure. The breathing's like the key one. There's when you were talking about that, there's, I was thinking, for a lot of people, man, if you try to put them in a quiet place and tell them to meditate, it's going to agitate them. It is really going to agitate them. They're not going to get relaxed, and they're going to get frustrated, and that's why they avoid doing it. It's not, meditation is not about getting relaxed. Sometimes it's about working with the agitation and just understanding, just being quiet and understanding how agitated the mind is, and how you're not able to focus the mind, even for 10, 20 seconds. You can only learn that by doing the deep work, right? To better understand yourself. And what I've found is, like, when I'm trying to introduce someone to this, to the idea of meditating, or I call it nervous system regulation, is sometimes you have to create a challenge or a stress and be able to actually put them into a practice where there is a bit of stimulus in terms of stress, and get them to use it to get calm. And sometimes that's, if you've been stuck in an upregulated state for so long, which is, I don't know, most people nowadays, just trying to get them to sit down and relax is maybe not the best way to go about it. in my experience. In my experience, you actually have to apply some stress and get them to learn to use that stress to get calm. Once they know how to do that, then you add the next layer and the next layer.
Yeah, I want to ask you about what stresses you would add, but first I just want to with the meditating thing, I think what a lot of people do is and I was this person for quite a while, you lie down and your mind is just racing hard and you're like, wow, this is uncomfortable. I can't meditate, get up. It's not for me. But I think meditating is not getting your mind to stop. Meditating is the skill or building the skill of bringing your focus back to your breath or back to the one point. So I have it all the time now when I meditate in the morning, and my mind still goes, it just always, but you're training your mind to become focused on the present. And that's just, the more you do it, the better you become at it, the better you become at calming the mind, or the calmer your mind is, the more you do this stuff. So your mind will never stop. Don't ever, well, unless you're a Buddhist monk in the Himalayas, but.
Yes, you're exactly right there. And once you understand that and how powerful that is for, just everything for mental stability, it can be done anywhere. Like I do it all the time, right? I'm driving my car. Okay, for the next 500 meters, I'm going to create one point of focus and see if I can sustain that focus. Right, we're running the sand dunes. And it's horribly uncomfortable. I'm going to try not to let my mind latch to the end. When you're going under the pool and you're crawling along under the pool and you've got to get to the end, when the stress comes in, what does the mind focus on? The end, right? Okay, so that all of this stuff is then meditation, if you know how to apply it into everything. And so you start getting very good at focusing your mind. And that is what unlocks creativity, your ability to focus. Because remember, an agitated mind, a mind that's latching to everything, can't focus or be creative. And so for me, I don't spend a lot of time just sitting down and meditating. I'm a very active relaxer. And so I try to integrate this stuff in all the time, just how I explained it. And yeah, I do very purposefully every day, find a quiet place and lie down and I do that. But it's not just about that. It's about then, that's only 20 minutes of my day. It's about then applying it into everything. And that's like ice bath, 2 minutes in the ice bath at 1 degree, and that is meditation. Because what are you trying to do? You're trying to focus your mind. You let it wander, bring it back. It's trying to latch onto the end. You bring it back. Every time you bring it back, you strengthen the higher brain centers, this front part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. Sustained focus, short-term memory, creativity, all the wonderful things you need for any type of performance. And just to the other point, when you were talking about like how what you're talking about is very simple, just a practice where, like, okay, if we take rugby, for example, after a session, they just lie down and down regulate by using their breathing or any form of, meditation. Do we have a problem at the moment in rugby with the amount of people getting injured?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Is there an issue there? Is there a problem there?
Probably, yeah.
I think there is. I think there's a big problem there, and it's getting more and more, right? Why? Because that's simple. There's more and more load. How do we get better? Add more load. Add more load. And the load ends up becoming the weakness. I work with lots of rugby players. Most of them come to me when they're injured because they've got some downtime, and it's easy to see when you ask the right questions how overloaded these players are, and the ripple-on effects are into their sleep, into their recovery, into their nervous system, into their breathing imbalance, into their muscular imbalance, predisposing them to injury. Are they getting? Yeah, there are certain injuries you can't avoid, right? Someone crashing into your knee, but a lot of these injuries are secondary to fatigue. Psychological and physiological fatigue.
Yeah, and the psychological, like you say, like just always being on edge and stress, and this is people in society as a whole, it affects your sleep, which affects your recovery, which affects your mental health, which makes you more agitated, which is just it's just all a big circle. And something when you're just chatting there about load, I was listening to Habib there, the old UFC fighter, talk about a year ago, longer ago probably actually, and he said, he's like, I train, I go to sleep. I train, I go to sleep. I get up, I eat, I go back to sleep. And like so intense, but it's so true. Like, because he was just saying, he's like, you can't, if it's all your life, and that's a bit on the extreme, and he was one of the best athletes in the world, but that was his number one focus, and he knew that outside of training, he needed to be recovering, and sleep was his thing, and that's what he did.
Yeah. I think a lot of athletes get stuck in this mindset of how do we get better? We add more load. Coaches also get stuck in that mindset. How are we
Big
going to
time.
competition? We add more load. And it's like I said, the load ends up becoming the weakness. There's a tipping point there. Of course there is. The system can only take so much, right? If you don't get the balance right between load and recovery, that's where injury and affecting your sleep, but that's where that stuff all starts coming in.
100%. It's often less. And just one little thing that comes to mind there with coaches. Coaches are a big problem with players accessing the flow or zone or whatever you want to call it. Coaches agitate the players and stress the players by giving them too much information, by training them too hard. And one thing, I was just doing a coach's workshop there during the week, helping them implement mental skills in their teams and all different sports. And one thing I was saying is, have a cutoff point from which, so say if you're playing on Saturday afternoon, don't give the player any more information after Friday at noon. Like, just nothing. And there's always more information to give. But you, before a match, say, hey, Dave, remember our lineouts around the halfway line. We need to hit the back, and then we're going to go wide off that, Dave. And then we want to kick when we're in our 22. All of a sudden, all you're thinking about is that going into the game, and it just stresses you out to make sure you get it right. And the coach is talking to me and da 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 da.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you learn from the people you coach, which 100%. And I love Adesanya, have for years, and I talked about his mindset in my new book. And but chat to me about some of the stuff you've learned from some of the athletes that you coach.
I think you learn different with everyone, but I think you learn, like, well, I do, just what a growth mindset is, because you're not going to achieve like what these elite level athletes are achieving unless you have a growth mindset. And that's all about, like, it doesn't matter what happens, you use it to your advantage. Something bad can happen, right, how do we leverage this to our advantage? That's something that, like, Israel is incredibly, I mean, like, you look at just coming off this last loss, and you think that would be something that would affect you, but with him it's just like straight back in there. It's like what I learned is just like this determination, this mental resilience, this incredible self-belief, and wanting to be there, like actually wanting to be there amongst the highest, the most stressful and high pressure situations, and wanting to be there, going towards it, going towards the fear, the apprehension, the tension. I think that's what I love about, like, being around that, because it's contagious. Yeah, and like from the fight athletes, I think it's such a unique sport, in that the stakes are very high, and so you're working with them in a fight camp, and you're leading towards this date, and like you can feel the momentum shift as you get closer, and it's just like it's such a huge challenge and such a wonderful thing to be involved in. But yeah, I love working with athletes across all, work with golf players, rugby, soccer, tennis, and it's not just athletes. It's like anyone who is motivated to optimize their health and performance. I just view like anyone that's specialized, whether you're a mum, you're a dad, you're a tradie, you're in an office looking at a screen all day, then you're an athlete. And you need to train for that, because specialization creates imbalance, and and without finding where that imbalance is, that just keeps amplifying.
Yeah, absolutely. High performance is high performance is high performance, regardless of what, like you mentioned, all those different things. And MMA is so interesting because it's like I say, the stakes are higher, like you could die. Like, it's different to playing tennis or golf or rugby to a little bit of an extent. It is different. And
You're very exposed. Sometimes in a team environment, you can hide behind the team. I always talk about do it for the team, do it for the team. It's like, no, the team will take care of itself if every single individual does it for themselves. You do it for yourself first and foremost, and the team will take care of itself. I don't know if that resonates with you.
yeah, I know what you mean. Like, be the best version of you. Be the best version of you first for the team, maybe, but be the best version of you.
Yeah, 100%. And we're all on a health journey, or we should be. If you're not on a health journey, if you're listening and you're not on a health journey of trying to optimize your physical and mental health, then what are you doing? You are lost. You have no challenge. You're just lost. And that's a terrible, terrible place to be. How do you change? You start creating some challenges, some physical and mental challenges, some goals. And I look at people that I'm in my early 40s, and I can see some of the people they get to 40 and they sort of just like let everything go. I just think I cannot understand that. I want to be getting fitter. I want to be getting healthier. I want to be getting stronger as I'm getting older. What else is there? Why ever let it go? Why ever let that happen to yourself? Imagine if you only had one car, and that was your car for the rest of your life. You would keep that car in meticulous condition, right? Tires would always be pumped up. You'd be out there waxing and cleaning it every week. Well, you've only got one body. It's got to last you your entire life. And working in the ambulance service, what I deal with over that 11-year period a lot were people stuck in their bodies for the last 20, 30, even 40 years of their life. And being stuck in your own body is it is not a way to live.
100%.
Sorry, and if anyone's listening to this and they are in that place, simplify it. Just start simple and start doing stuff every day. Start investing in your own physical and mental health every day, and it will pay dividends. And that doesn't have to be anything crazy, right? Just start simple.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Can't remember the exact words used there, but on a health journey or whatever the words you use, I love it. And my parents are 63 and 60, and I'm on to them. They're incredible, but they're fitter, healthier now than they were in their 40s, no doubt. And they're so active, and they're doing exercise classes. They're playing golf all the time. They're just very, very active as well as working. And it's so true. And people used to think you slow down as you get older, and that's just what you do. Like you said about 40, stop, slow down, done. But it's so obvious for longevity, the ones that keep going, and your standard of life is better. Because my brother is a doctor, as I said, and he sees people who, that stay active. They don't fall over and break a hip. They don't, in their 80s, they have a way better quality of life. And we can probably all think of the examples of the person in their 80s that was out running, or even 90s out walking, and these people around the town or whatever, these older people, and it's all about staying active. And I love what you say as well about just investing in your body and mind, and you only get one, and it's, you know, what food are you putting into it, and it's just, you know, are you working out, are you exercising, are you, you know, it's all you have.
Yeah, I did a 11-year study, a gold standard study, when I was working in the ambulance. And what it was every time I went to someone over the age of 90, early on, like when the job would come down the screen and you see like they're over 90 years old, you'd be like, oh man, oh no, this is going to be some, you know, person's like stuck in their bed and bedridden, and you don't make it to 90 unless you've done something right? And whether that be genetics or you've just really looked after yourself. And so you'd go to these people over the age of 90 and up into, you know, centurions, and you'd get there and they would have no evidence of cognitive decline. They'd be walking around without, you know, they may have fallen over and have a little skin tear, or they've called for something, you know, nothing major. And I would always ask them, like, what is the secret? What is the secret to aging so well? And they would always, it was always the same things. I worked until late in life because I was passionate about what I was doing. Didn't stop working at 60. I'm still working. You know, social interaction. They're very social. You know, they go down still going down the local pub or meeting up with mates or whatever. They all talk about owning a veggie patch. It was uncanny how many of them still owned a veggie patch and were tending to their veggie patch and eating vegetables out of their veggie patch. You know, so their nutrition was important to them. They were still very active in terms of like physically. And so it's just simple things, man, like simple things that you integrate, the pillars of health. That's all it is. And if like you don't get that stuff right, there's no point in adding any more of the fancy stuff if you don't have the pillars of health squared away.
Yeah, 100%. And it's something just kind of thought there, but like, you know, you talk about the health and the pillars of health, and if you're not looking after those, you're essentially killing yourself. You know, I can think of people just very, very stressed all the time, and you are like, that's what you're doing, you know. And if you're not, you know, another thing, if you're not growing, you're disintegrating, or if, you know, if you're not going in one direction, you're going the other way. And it's just, yeah, that's just so important.
Yeah, well, you and I are on a health journey. We value that stuff, and yeah, I always ask this one question to all of my clients. Like, so I'll have the initial consultation, and I always ask who it is, how many times in a week would your barefoot touch the earth's surface?
Oh,
Clients like, I had this one client, he lives in New York, and he sat there and he was thinking about it, and he goes, you know what? Never. He's like, I cannot remember the last time. Well, that person is going to have chronic inflammation, and they're going to be disconnected from the most important thing that we need to be connected to, not only ourselves but the environment, the land, right? Like nature. And so
absolutely.
I had a deliberate purpose of like, that's why I love surfing so much, because surfing, you're out there amongst the elements, you're in the water, you're on the sand, you're like, but I'm very deliberate about, like, in my day, about reconnecting every single day to nature.
Yeah, that's so good. And like I say, reconnecting to nature, like put your phone away, go for a walk in the woods, or go for a walk along the river or whatever. That's one way of doing it. And any single person who's been coached by me in the last 2 or 3 years will know I love just being barefoot. You know, even I love it. If the weather is like above 12, 13 degrees, I'm barefoot. And it's so enjoyable. It's just so nice. And it's hard to, you just feel, you notice it, you do, like, because I would have for years been, you know, in shoes and inside, and you feel more grounded or just relaxed.
Yes. Nowadays, you have to push back against the norm. You have to push back against the norm, because the norm is what is killing us. This complacent adaptation. You know, this comfort of everything's got to be like, oh, I'm going outside, I put my shoes on, or I'm going for a walk, I put my shoes on. Out here at Piha, man, there's like, I go down the beach and there's people that have come out here to connect with nature, and they're walking on the beach in their shoes, and I just boggles my mind how we have got to this point. Yeah, I basically like. I never wear shoes just because I've got used to not wearing them, and wearing them now just feels so wrong. But at my gym in town in Auckland City, I sometimes at lunch will go up to like the mall or something, and because I very often don't take my shoes and I'm walking around the mall in bare feet. And the other month I was walking through the food court, and I walked past this morbidly obese woman who was drinking a liter of Fanta, and she stopped and she just stared at me. And she was just with her mouth open, just staring at my feet and looking me up and down. So I stopped and I was staring at her, and we both stopped and we were just staring at each other. And I just thought, and I walked on and I just thought, man, we are just so like, I thought it was absurd that there's you're morbidly obese and you're drinking a liter of Coke, and she thought it was absurd that I was just walking around the mall in bare feet.
Yeah. Oh, it's mad. And it's something the Kiwis are more in touch with. I learned this thing when I was over in Canada. The kind of people there talk about it. I'd heard about it there, grounding. But I remember one of my buddies, a Kiwi, who came over to play with us 10 years ago in Connacht. He used to walk around bare feet, and we used to look at him as if we're like, sorry, what? And to be fair, he'd take it a step further. It'd be piss and rain, and he'd still be at it. But that's me now. Like, I get it. I get it.
Yeah, well, we run this Calm Under Pressure workshop, which is a workshop we run here in New Zealand, a stress mitigation workshop. There's a bit of a shameless plug for my workshop, but yeah, we run it every sort of 6 weeks to 2 months. And it's run over 2 days, but when people come on this workshop, it's expected that you leave your shoes behind. So for 2 days, and you'll often there'll be one person in every group that just floors them. It's just like, I can't, I'm not doing that. And it's like, well, those are the rules. We're going on the beach and, need your shoes. But yeah, some people are really taken back. They can't believe that you're telling them that they have to take their shoes off.
Yeah. And on the workshop, do you limit phone use?
Nah, but the workshop is it's a pretty intensive workshop over 2 days. Like there's we're running through those three things I talked about, getting them to understand underlying mechanisms, teaching them the skills, practical applications, time to be on your phone. And people don't want to be on their phone because they're so engrossed in what they're doing. They're there for like self-betterment. And our goal, my team's goal with that workshop, is to make that the best stress mitigation workshop in the world, and we're going to achieve that. And where that workshop has evolved in the last 2 years is it's an incredible 2 days. And you can see the change in people over that 2 days, where they start to better understand their own patterns of behavior and how it's inhibiting their own health and performance, and their understanding of how stress is manifesting, or even anxiety is manifesting. And yeah, they end up like they're on the beach, they're in the pool, they're in the ice bath, they're in the classroom. We get speakers come in. It's just a very cool 2 days.
Unreal. And I'm conscious of your time, but something you said there I love is you said, I'm going to make it the best in the world, or it's going to be the best in the world. And I absolutely love that. And when I was growing up, I think in Ireland, and you hear the tall poppy syndrome, and it's the same here in New Zealand, from what I gather, and Australia, or different places. But and that's something that I remember hearing people that like ADESANYA is very like, people don't know what to make from, because Kiwis, because he's so different. And McGregor, when McGregor was on his rise, like, look, I think the money has kind of corrupted his mind, but you look at him on his rise, the exact same as Adesanya. The two of them had a knowingness that they were going to be champions, so far away from when they were at the very start of their journey. They had a knowingness that they were going to be the best in the world. And the way you said it there, and it's something I've understood recently, a knowingness with some of the things I'm going towards. But when I was growing up, you were nearly ashamed to talk about, like, if someone said, if I heard you say that 10 years ago, or the way I was conditioned my mind, I would say, what a dickhead, look at him, he's so cocky, or whatever. And you put yourself down, and you keep yourself down, and you always say like, oh, well, I'm just going to be here and do that. You nearly telling yourself you're no good and you're not worthy of stuff. That's the way we were brought up and the way I was. But like why it's I love it the way you say that, and I'm the same, and maybe maybe I'm at a point where I would say something like that myself personally, out loud, which I would love to get to soon, you know what I mean? But man, it's class, and that's what, as I said, Adesanya McGregor, and you have to have that knowingness. I think that's the word.
Yeah, I never would have said it 10 years ago because I was the same. I grew up in an environment where if you put your head up, you got pushed back down, and so I never would have said it. But what I've learned now is like I actually know I'm going to achieve it, and that comes from my ability now to not only just like manifest things, but really believe in myself. Um, and this is like working with, this is what I talked about earlier on, like working with these athletes who are achieving these things is very contagious, man. You start
Mm,
to get them talking about it, then you see them do it, and it's like, hey, far out, man. I want it. I want that behavior. But also, I've learned like a lot about goal setting, and I set that goal like years ago. It was unrealistic. When I set that goal, it was totally unrealistic, and it should be. That's when you set goals. Your long-term goals should be unrealistic, and you know, as a couple of years go by, you're like, you start to achieve your medium-term goals that you've set. You're doing your day-to-day goals, and you're starting to tick off some of these medium-term goals, and then that long-term goal, the best stress mitigation workshop in the world, that was unrealistic when I set it, is now tangible, and it will be tangible, and it will achieve it in yeah, like the next couple of years. And it's not even actually not even about that. It's not even like how do you even like quantify that? It's unquantifiable, right? I don't know if I've got the best stress mitigation workshop in the world. I don't even actually care really, but it's keeping me on track, and it's really making me push. And so with the goals, it's not all about achieving the goal. Sometimes you have to shift the goalpost, and you might need to put that goal out a year, or you might need to change it slightly and be more realistic. But you set the bar high, and it's not always about achieving the goal. It's about keeping on that process.
100%, 100%. I absolutely love it. Yeah, and I see it with the players I work with now, rugby players. Like, I want to be a professional rugby player, and they're like on their second team in high school, and they're 16. But it's you keep working on the process, like you say, and then those medium term goals just start happening. Things just start happening. You get selected for a team. All of a sudden, just something happens. You get a call, and that's when you start to see the power of it. You start to go, oh, all right.
Yeah, well, none of that stuff ever happens unless you back yourself, because no one else is going to do it for you. Like, you have to like really back yourself, and when you do that, when you put yourself out there, and you might say things like that or really back yourself, there are going to be the people that are even close to you, people that you never would have thought would have doubted you or pushed you down. They will be there, and it is very easy to like let that affect you. In fact, it's impossible almost to not let it affect you. But when you know the destination, you just push through all that stuff. You either go around it or you push right through it, and you keep going, right? The problem nowadays is we're so worried about what everyone thinks of us, and we're so fearful of failure. When in this workshop I run, we do this thing where we sit in a circle and we all go around, we talk about our weaknesses. And you hear this all the time. People say this, I worry too much about what other people think, and I'm scared of failing. Those two things I hear over and over and over again, and it's so sad, man, that like that there's such a large portion of the population that are dealing with that, and don't know, and are letting it hold them back, because those people are capable of so much, but that they're letting those external things hold them back. You almost just have to like, there's so many things you can do, but sometimes you just got to draw a line in the sand and be like, hey, this is my mindset. I'm not going to let that stuff control me anymore, and make a decision. And that may mean that like, yeah, people are going to say stuff, and they're going to, it's going to be uncomfortable, whatever, but it's worth it, man. It's so worth it when you really challenge yourself to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm reading a book right now, or just finishing it, called The Top Five Regrets of the Dying. And number one is what you just said. People, oh, I wish I didn't care so much about what other people thought of me and lived the life that was true to me. And just something else you said there, it's so worth it. And it is. And it's something that made the decision a couple of years ago. And it's the most worth it thing that ever there was to do.
It gives me goosebumps, man, because I got some catching up to do, because for a lot of my life, I was too worried about whatever, and I look back, man, and it was all just trying to prove myself to people, you know, and it was all bullshit. I cared so much about what other people thought about me that it really meant that sometimes I didn't take risks, or I didn't put myself out there, and I let my mind dominate me. You know, so sometimes it's very it comes in very subconsciously, where you will find an out to not do something, because you're worried, about what other people think. You know, like, man, even with like what I'm, even now, even recently, that has happened to me, where I've tried to find an out. Um, and unless you really check in on yourself and realize what you're doing, it's very easy just to allow that to happen. But I always just stop, take a step back. Hey, what am I actually doing here? Actually, I'm trying to avoid this because I'm scared of failure.
Yeah. Cheers. Very last question. Was there a moment or a point or something that forced you to stop caring about what others thought and move forward this way?
Yeah. If I'm going to make this thing work, um, this business, then, man, if you're going to, like, I don't know, that's such a loaded question, but it was just that I got to the point where it's like, I'm doing this for me. That might sound selfish, but I'm doing it for me first and foremost. Yeah, I want to help people, but I'm doing this for me. I'm taking care of myself, and that is about getting rid of all that stuff. And it's not a linear process. It's like you always fall back into those old patterns, right? But now I have the awareness around what I'm doing. Man, just like on a very, I was in the sauna the other night, and I got in the sauna a little bit later than what I normally would. It was like 7 o'clock, and while I was in the sauna, I was like, well, tonight I won't do the ice bath after the sauna because it's getting late. And then so I was quite content with that. I was lying there, and about 5 minutes passed, and I was like, ooh, it sneaked in again. It's very sneaky. And so what I do, I get out of the sauna and jump in the ice bath, because I'm not going to let my mind dominate me. And yeah, it's just all about awareness, man.
Yeah, I love it. And I know exactly what you mean. You're like, I'm doing it for me. And it's what the way I saw it was like, my happiness is most important, and I need to, that's just what's most important. So I'm doing this because I need to be happy. And it's like, yes, I will help other people, but like, I don't have regrets when I'm older.
The most important thing in life is helping other people, and you can't help other people unless you sort yourself out first and foremost. And those people, when I say helping other people, that just might be your kids, it might be your family, it might be your friends, it might be the people that the business you'll work in, whatever. Yeah.
100%. Well, hey, while we're here, this is going to be the biggest rugby podcast in the world as well. Just piggybacking it. That's a fact, and this is only a side thing. There's other things as well that'll happen. But hey, Dave, thanks a mil for your time. I've loved chatting, and tell people where they can find you and other workshops in Auckland. But for your website, your Instagram, and all that stuff.
Website is wmw.co.nz. Instagram is integrated, WMW integrated training, or just integrated training. You'll find it on Instagram. Follow along. Have a look at the website. We've just vamped up our website, and it's got all the information on there. wmw.co.nz.
Yeah, and then you do the workshop and also work with the people.
Do one-on-one training, do run these workshops, run specific sport and corporate workshops based on tailored to the team. And then I run these 3-day intensives where people come out and they spend 3 full days. And then I do online training with people in New Zealand and abroad. Athletes, professionals, mums and dads, anyone trying to optimize performance and health.
Brilliant. Cheers.
Brother.